History 420, brought to you by the Office of Health Promotion. The history of marijuana. Let's start with its many names: weed, pot, dope, grass, reefer, herb, Mary Jane, Aunt Mary, bud, boom, 420, and many more. Why 420? In 1971, a group of California teens who called themselves the Waldos used to smoke at 420 after school because that's when extracurricular activities were over. When they said 420, they meant it was marijuana time. At some point, the Grateful Dead band got a hold of this term and it spread globally. Marijuana is the mixture of dried, shredded flowers and leaves that comes from the hemp plant. Centuries ago, domestic production of hemp was encouraged in America for making rope, sails, and clothing. In fact, in 1619, the Virginia Assembly passed legislation requiring farmers to grow hemp. Hemp was allowed to be exchanged as legal tender in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland. After the Civil War, other materials were imported and replaced hemp for many purposes. Also during the 19th century, marijuana was used for medical products and sold openly. In 1906, the Food and Drug Act, also known as the Wiley Act, required manufacturers to label food and drugs sold in interstate commerce. The presence of dangerous ingredients including alcohol, heroin, cocaine, and hemp had to be listed. After the Mexican Revolution of 1910, Mexican immigrants allegedly introduced the American culture to recreational use of marijuana. The drug became associated with immigrants, and prejudice about the Spanish-speaking newcomers became associated with marijuana. Anti-drug campaigners warned against the quote-unquote marijuana menace, and terrible crimes were attributed to marijuana and the Mexicans who used it. Around 1930, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics was created. The first commissioner was Harry J. Anslinger, who remained in that post until 1962. Rising concern about marijuana and research linking it to crime put pressure on the federal government to take action. The Federal Bureau of Narcotics strongly encouraged states to accept responsibility for the problem by adopting the Uniform State Narcotic Act. In 1936, a film titled Reefer Madness was produced by a French director, but the Motion Picture Association of America banned the showing of any narcotics in films. Harry J. Anslinger became a powerful anti-marijuana voice. He campaigned against cannabis, which led to the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. After a national propaganda campaign against quote-unquote evil weed, Congress passed the act. Under this act, the importation, cultivation, possession, and/or distribution of marijuana was regulated. This effectively criminalized marijuana, restricting possession of the drug to individuals who paid an excess tax for certain authorized medical and industrial uses. In 1939, the mayor of New York, Mayor LaGuardia, commissioned the New York Academy of Medicine to extensively research marijuana. The group reported that, contrary to popular belief, the use of marijuana did not induce violence, insanity, or sex crimes, or lead to addiction or other drug use. During World War II, imports of hemp and other materials crucial to producing marine necessities became scarce. The United States Department of Agriculture launched its Hemp for Victory campaign, encouraging farmers to plant hemp by giving them seeds and granting draft deferments to those who would stay home and grow the product. The Boggs Act of 1952 and Narcotics Control Act of 1956 set mandatory sentences for drug-related offenses including marijuana. First offense for possession carried a minimum of 2 to 10 years with a fine of up to $20,000. In the 60s, the use of marijuana became widespread in the white upper middle class. Reports during this time also found that marijuana use did not induce violence, nor did it lead to heavier drug use. Criminal penalties around marijuana began to include treatment. Congress repealed most of the mandatory penalties for drug-related offenses around 1970. It was widely acknowledged that the mandatory minimums of early years had done nothing to eliminate the drug culture that embraced marijuana in the 60s. The SHAFER Commission, appointed by Nixon at the direction of Congress, determined that personal use of marijuana should be decriminalized. Nixon rejected the recommendation, but over the course of the 1970s, 11 states decriminalized marijuana and most others reduced their penalties. In 1973, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, was created, and in 1974, High Times was founded. In 1986, Reagan reintroduced mandatory sentences for drug-related crimes. Along with the Comprehensive Crime Control Act of 1984, the new law raised federal penalties for marijuana possession and dealing, basing the penalties on the amount of drugs involved. In 1989, Bush declared a war on drugs. In 1996, California voters passed Proposition 215, allowing for the sale of medical use of marijuana for patients with AIDS, cancer, and other diseases. In 2016, Proposition 64 passed and recreational use became legal in California. As we know, several other states have now legalized marijuana for both medical and recreational use. In conclusion, there is still much to learn about marijuana, and due to it being a Schedule I drug, there is a limit to what research can take place. I would like to note that marijuana has long been thought of as a gateway drug. Currently, we know that tobacco is the culprit. Studies have found that teens who smoke before the age of 15 are more likely to binge drink, use heroin or cocaine and/or marijuana. Look for more videos on our virtual wellness page and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.